Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well tonight. And welcome to another Learning Live featuring our favorite things. So, we are showcasing all of our favorite things in hopes of making them your favorite things. And tonight, Darlene is going to be featuring not one, but two favorite things, but they work together. So she's not really cheating. It's all good and it's all going to work well together. So without further ado, Darlene, I am going to hand the screen over to you and you can take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm happy to be here and tell you about my favorite thing. And the first thing that I am going to talk about is the MISTI. A few of you know about the MISTI. A few of you have put it on your wish list. The MISTI comes in various sizes and, of course, various colors. So the original MISTI, which is this one over here, is the pink one. So if you don't know, my sweet Petunia has created the MISTI as well as the glue press. It's the MISTI stands for the most incredible stamp tool invented. With the pink one, they have now launched two other colors. There's the black one and as well as the teal. Teal is beautiful. All three of them are the same. It's just the color that is different. So that is
Now
the
they
original.
need a green one.
Right? Or purple.
Or purple.
Yeah. I will talk
Green
more
tool,
about the
purple magnet.
right. Let me just show you the different sizes and then I'll talk more about it. And then they've created this one, the 12 by 12. It's called the Memory MISTI. And you can see how big it is. So if you are a scrapbooker or if you like to work on bigger surfaces, this is a great tool to have. It's really, really big. That one is really nice to have as well. And of course, they came out with the mini MISTI, and the mini MISTI goes up to 6 inches on vertical and about 4.5 going horizontal top and bottom. So it's perfect for an A2 size card, which is 4.25 by 5.5. And they have launched the pink. Rumor has it, if I'm correct, Sherry, that they might be coming with a colored version of the mini MISTI.
And the last that I heard, now this was probably maybe this time last year, there was talk of there being a teal mini MISTI. Currently, it is exclusive to Tailored Expressions. But when we were on the website today ordering more glue presses, because we need more glue presses, I did not see a teal mini MISTI yet. So it could be a December thing.
Ooh, well, that's exciting. Another color, and the teal is a beautiful color. So just to talk about the MISTI, this is the MISTIs that we have in store right now is 2.0 one. It's the most recent and current MISTI in the market. If you have the old one, it's not to say that it is bad, but they did do some new features to it. So I will talk about the new features and what's different between the new one versus the old one. First things first, which really caught my attention, is the actual measurements on the side. So with the original MISTI, these measurements on the side were stickers. And what they did was that they actually produced other colored stickers. So let's say a blue sticker. So if you didn't like the pink that came with it, you can put the sticker, the ruler sticker, on top and customize it to your favorite color. I'm not sure how many colors they came out with, but that was the original. But over time, as you use your MISTI, you would have noticed that the numbers started fading off the stickers. So 2.0, with like this one here, let me see if I can bring it up. The numbers are now etched in. So they don't peel off, they won't rub off, and they won't fade. So that is the most recent addition. As well as, I'm not sure, with the new ones, if you can you see it, the lid is now a little bit I guess bigger than the base. And the reason for that is that so now you can lift it. So having it bigger as well as adding a little notch to the lid right over here, you can lift that flap a little bit more easily. The original one, it was flushed right to the edge. Another difference between the 2.0 is that they no longer have that sharp edges on your lid. It is now, it looks like it's an angled cut, and they have eliminated that sharp edges, so you don't poke yourself, you don't injure yourself as you are crafting. Another thing I liked about the new 2.0 is the hinges. In the original MISTI, the hinges were made out of plastic. The new one, like this one here, they have added a metal component inside the hinges, which makes your lid last much longer than the plastic. And with that metal, because it is more durable now, that your lid doesn't fling close. As you can see, I can put it at any degree and the lid won't smack down. So let's say if you're crafting, you don't want it to go boom down on your project while you're not ready and have ink on it. Now that with the sturdy hinge, you can put at any degree and it's not going to close at you. So the 2.0 has lots of new improvement. It works the same way as the original, but as any product or tool in the market, they keep making it better and better. Another thing here, if you've noticed where my magnet is that they have I call it the housing station for a magnet. So instead of leaving your magnet on your top of in the middle of your platform, it has a little home that it can go to. And that is the home. Another thing I like to do with magnets, and a lot of people do, is adding a piece of washi tape. These magnets are super, super strong. Let me grab the memory, Misty, because I think you could see I've covered all my magnets with washi tape. So let me show you one that isn't covered. So this magnet is super, super strong. And if you were using any other magnets with it, just be careful because they do hurt when the magnets go against each other, but also it will pick up the magnet really quickly. See how fast that came up together? So you want to make sure your fingers are not in the way. The best way to take them apart is pushing them. So try not to lift it. If you push it, it's easier to separate. So that's why I like having the washi tape here, because then if you're working a project, at least you can lift it easily without having to dig your finger to lift it up. So that is one of my tips, and a tip that a lot of my team members share with everyone.
Darlene, if I can interrupt, something for people to know about those magnets is that because they're super strong, but because of how they're made, they are also very brittle. So if you do have your magnets crashed together, like Darlene had just shown, they could break. So you need to be very, very careful with those magnets. And also, if you are prepping for a class or a crop or somewhere where you're leaving the home, I would hesitate to leave your MISTI in the car in the cold, because it could make that magnet even more brittle and give it an even higher chance of breaking. So you can buy magnets separately if you wanted to have a spare magnet handy for you, but just be really careful with those magnets.
Yeah, they are super strong. Another thing they've done to the 2.0, I think you could see it. Let me see if I can get a white cardstock. Is now the grid on the actual flap is printed in gray. The original MISTI, it was in white, and there had been a lot of suggestions and people asking if they can change the color, because if you are working with a white cardstock and your grids on the front is also white, there's no way you can see those grids on your white cardstock. So now they have done it on gray, so you could see those grids on any light colored cardstock, and you don't have to worry about, your sentiment or your stamp is crooked. So those were the core changes to the 2.0. And let's show you what this thing does. So if you don't have a platform, it is something that is quite useful for your crafting room or your crafting table. So in your MISTI, they always include a little foam pad as well as a pad of paper. I like how they came out with, it is an add-on. It is a mouse pad. So it replaces the paper, it replaces the foam, and it goes into place. The reason why I changed the mouse pad is that I found that this paper, usually you could use one or two. Sometimes I leave it in there, but I found that when I was stamping, sometimes this paper will also come up or it will shift and it will move my projects along. And eventually, if you mucked it up and it got stamped and you keep tearing it down, you were left with just a piece of foam. I like how the mouse pad has that foam, but it has this nice surface that, yes, sometimes the inking does stain. Most of the time I can get any of my water-based inks off. I'm a little bit trickier with some of the other kinds of inks out in the market. But I like how there's a grid and that tends to stay inside. If you tune in further down, there is something else that I leave inside my MISTI. But let's do some fun techniques with the MISTI. So here I am. I have a nice white cardstock. I have my magnet here so nothing moves. The MISTI is great for single stamping or sentiment stamping. So let's say I wanted to put, I'm using my favorite lawn fawn, an image in the middle. So placing it, let's say you've done it and these are yucky, let's say it's inked up and you're scared it's going to get onto your surface. I like keeping a little piece of acetate there. So that way it doesn't ruin the paper that I have, yet I can still position it somewhat in the middle. Let's see if I can eyeball that. Grab it with the lid. So this lid is like your acrylic block and it pulls those stamps off. I'm just going to take that off. Now my paper is ready. So this lid acts as an acrylic block. Okay, so let's stamp this up. I brought my ink this time. And I am going to just put some black ink on my penguins and just push it down. Okay, I just like to lightly, you don't want to push too hard because you don't want the ink to spread over the lines and make it look thick. And there is my penguins. But let's say some of it didn't do it so nicely. You can restamp. So let me do one where I don't put a lot of ink. So let's do one where I'm going to purposely lightly ink and miss some spots. So here is me stamping. You go, oh no, that missed a spot. So the nice thing is that with the platform, because your paper is in the same placement, your stamp is also on the lid, you can go back, reapply the ink, and stamp over top. So one of the great benefits of having a stamping tool is that you can keep adding ink to however dark you need it. Whereas an acrylic block, if you're using something like this, it's much harder to go back a second time because you might go a little bit offset. So this platform gives you that nice way of re-inking. And it's not only a stamp image. I love it for sentiments. So let me use the sentiment right over here. And let me wipe this off. So let me just clean that. And before I take it off, another thing is that if you leave your penguins on the lid, let's say you color this or you watercolored or you did a blending over top of it and those black lines disappeared, you can always put it back into your MISTI at the same corner. So I've always put mine on the right-hand corner. Re-ink it, go back on top, and you can darken those lines again. So that's another way of doing it. Let me just remove it so I can show you the sentiment. So always line it up at a corner because it's easier to match it back at the corner. Have your magnet on it so your paper is not shifting. I am going to ink my sentiment and push it down. So the nice thing about this is that, let's say you have to make 100 cards because, you know, it's Christmas and you need to get going. You can, because it's on the same, it's on the cover, you haven't moved it, and you like the placement, you can keep stamping for mass producing. And that's the one thing I like, is that I will stamp, do all my sentiments, and then there. So that's number 2. It's in the same spot, and I can do multiples of it. So it's a great way for mass producing for that. Another thing I like to do with this, I'm just cleaning it because I'm going to move it, is let's say you were adding sentiments to 10 cards, and it's the same sentiment over and over again. So this does involve some, you know, calculations. I'm just taking another sentiment so you can see how well it is. And I know I'm starting at the right hand side here, and this takes up about 3 blocks from the bottom. So let me pull that up. So I know it takes 3 squares. I'm going to add this to my paper. And I am, whoops, just going to ink. So lightly ink, lightly push. Oh, sorry, wrong way. I should have done it top to bottom. I think it's easier because then I can, because, hold on, let me change that up. I'm working the opposite way, harder to move. So this is why I cut lots of paper in. So this is 3 squares. Just gonna put that, so I know that's 3 squares that I'm moving. So it's just the opposite because I need to move my paper upwards, and you'll see in a second. And let me ink that up again. And then it was 3 squares, so I'm going to move this 3 squares. So it is right over here. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. 3 squares up and restamp. So depending on how big your sentiments are and how much space you want in between. And then I'll move it up another 3 squares, 1, 2, 3. And that way I can just keep stamping by just moving my paper, but without having to clean my stamp because I don't want to get it dirty. And this is a great way to do a background too. So if you have different colors, oh, I kind of misjudged. So now let's see. I didn't pay, yeah. So if let's say you wanted to do different colors, and this technique would work as well. You could just keep wiping the sentiment on your lid. Sorry, the color off your sentiment. Hopefully I did this right. I might have, yep, I need to move it up one more. Too busy talking and did not see. So I could probably fit one more. So it goes right to the top here. And let me add one more. So with the memory Misty, you could probably do a whole page, but now I have all these sentiments that could be a background, or I can cut them. If I take out my trimmer, I know it was 3/4 of an inch. I can cut them into strips. So let me show you how quickly that is by just doing something simple with a platform. So now I know it's about 3 inches. I'm going to make sure. So there's 1. There's 2.
That's also great if you're die cutting them as well.
Yes. And that is 3. So just to give you an idea, so at least then you have your sentiment strips and you could just add it onto your card. So that is another reason why I love the Misty, is that it does take a lot of that mass producing to a new level. So another thing I like to do And we do it a lot for class prep here is when we have to stamp multiple images. I usually cut mine all to either 8.5 by 11, not 8.5 by 11, half a sheet of a letter size or an A4 card. And I will grab all the stamps that we need, let's say for our card. Please excuse if there's remnants of ink on it. Might have not been cleaned properly, but let's do 3. Oops, let's take this off. Let's stick it somewhere. And then, so here, putting a lot of images on it. And then I will stamp all of them all at once. Oops, make sure you're, and close it. There you go. And if you want to make it darker, like I missed the nose on the reindeer, I'm just going to turn that upside down. And I can go again, and I will know for sure that should line up. Okay. And it gives you that nice crisp look, and you can make lots of them and have it ready to color. And that way, when I color, I can just die cut it easily after. So one of my favorite things about the MISTI. So that was me using the photopolymer stamp. But you're asking, what about the red rubber stamps, or the thicker stamps? So I have one of those to show you. Let me take this. So with the red rubber stamp, because of its thickness, you don't need the mouse pad. So depending on, because it is very thick, let's see if this works. So this one, the magnet's going to get in the way, and that's when, for further down, is a grip mat's nice because you don't have to worry about that. I'm scared this is going to move, and I don't have washi tape here. Well, we'll make it work. I'm going to use it without and try to make it work. So this replaces that mouse pad because look how thick it is. It's already lined up to the edge. And I am going to cover the lid, make sure that that is stuck on nicely, and we're going to ink it. So I'm just using Distress ink. So let's ink the red rubber. And stamp it. So you can see I didn't do all the places. I'm making sure it's lined up at the corner. So when I restamp again, because you can see I'm not using a magnet here, I'm going to ink more of my background. And I'm trying to see where I missed. Not smart using blue because I can't see on the red. Maybe that will be better. So then you can keep going on top, and then I can see that I'm missing over here, which is on the edge here. So let me see if I can fix that. That's a nice thing about this, is that I can see where I missed, and I can go back and forth until I get that coverage. I need my pressure tool. So not enough pressure, but you can go over and over, and as you can see, even though I've done it a couple of times, none of the lines are out of place. They're still on top of each other, depending on how much ink I put on that stamp. It's just going on top of each other. So it's a great way to use also red rubber. great for texture, and that way you don't need to invest in a huge entire acrylic block just to do these big red rubbers. Let me clean it so it doesn't transfer. Does anyone have a MISTI? Do you love it as much as I love mine? Great, a really great tool. So another thing, so I showed you different ways of stamping using photopolymer, the red rubber, but you can also do stenciling on it. So when I stencil, because you don't need the lid, I just need the bottom. And depending on where you want to put your stencil, oops, you can also stencil with it. So with my magnet, I'm just going to hold that down. Let's change it up. I did blue. Let's do some purple. You can also do stenciling. So that magnet is handy because it holds it down as well as you work. So it's a great crafting surface too. And that way, if you walked away and you don't want anything to fall off, sometimes if I walk away, I'll just close the lid and, you know, it won't get ruined or something smush it. Sorry. So a great tool for stenciling as well. So the MISTI is very universal to any ways that you want to use it for. I primarily use it for stamping and stenciling. I love the mass producing, that is me. But any questions about the MISTI? I will come back to the MISTI in a second because I do use my next favorite tool with it, and having the MISTI and the Waffle Flower Grip Mat together, it's my most favorite tool to use. I can't use them without each other.
Before you go on, we do have a question. What kind of Chucky tool is the best to use? Now, I did put the pressure tool that we carry. I put the link into the comments for people to have a peek at. I don't know if you have yours handy.
Let me see if I have it. I might. You would say I live at the store because, it's like I have a second set out of everything. So this is my favorite one. It is our Chucky version of our tool, and it helps with pressure. So give me 2 seconds. Sorry, I have this cough. I'm just going to take one of these to show. So what the tool does is it helps with pressure so you're not using your wrist, because we all have a problem where we have a sore wrist, and this tool eliminates you having to push down on your lid. So the way I like it, it would have worked on the red rubber, is, let's say I'm going to stamp this. You put it down. So instead of pushing your hand on it, this tool has this nice little felt. It's almost like similar to what they put underneath your chair so there's no glide. But this material also doesn't scratch the top of your glass. What you'll do is just push it down and lightly roll. It might look like I'm using a lot of effort, but I'm just really touching it in circular motion. And it helps you push down that lid. And it also avoids you from pushing too hard and having that ink spread from your stamp set. So there you go. So this is my favorite one. I find that this has a nice grip. I know I've tried doing the air hockey, the pucks one, but I find with that little handle, my wrist started hurting. So this is a perfect one. It's a nice grip. It's nice and big at the circular and nice even pressure.
And I think it's important for people to know that you should never push really hard on the cover of your MISTI. If you feel like you are getting in there with both hands, both feet, elbows, knees, all that kind of stuff, you're probably pushing too hard and you do run the risk of cracking that cover. So that pressure tool really gives you a leg up in terms of the pressure you push without actually putting a lot of pressure on the plate itself.
Yeah, so it's a great tool. So once again, just to summarize, the MISTI is great for mass producing. You could see the consistent stamping if you're doing multiples. The clear image, the precise restamping like sentiments or image outlines. And also the repetitiveness of if you wanted to stamp several of the same sentiments, you can achieve all that with this platform. And it comes in different sizes. This is the original size because it was a nice amount of room that you had. But when I travel around, I go with my small one. It's easy for me to just pick up and move. It's the one I carry in my work bag all the time. So the great things about the MISTI and the 3 different sizes. So this is the one thing I haven't invested in yet, is the memory one. So if you're a scrapbooker, can you imagine all the titles you can do on it using all your alpha stamps, or even if you have a nice floral stamp that you want to incorporate, this is a great tool to have in your stash. So that is the MISTI. So I will come back to MISTI. I'm just going to move MISTI to the side so I don't drop it. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to move some of the other ones behind. So next up, the next of my favorite thing is the Waffle Flower Grip Mat. And there are many sizes that Waffle Flower have. The ones that we have in store, the biggest one is 7.5 by 11. 6.5 by 8.5. This is the perfect one to fit in the original MISTI. That's the size for that. Next up is the 6 by 6 grip mat. The 4 3/4 by 6 is the one for the mini MISTI, and I already have mine inside. And of course, the 4 by 4 grip mat, which is what we brought in, and I will show you there's lots of things you could do with it, but one of our favorite ways of it. So I don't know how many sizes they have in total. I don't know if it's 7 or 8. This is the 2.0. So as you can see, everything tonight is the newer versions of the product. Waffle Flower's original one had the 8 by 8. It is now discontinued. I think there's a second one they've also discontinued. But these are all the 2.0s, and I will tell you what they've changed and what they do as I go along. So now I'm going to I'm just dropping stuff on the floor.
Darlene, I'm just going to interrupt you. There is only the 6 sizes. Oh. So I think we are at a point now that we have all 6 sizes in stock.
Awesome.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there is a 5.5 by 8.5. So a little bit smaller than that 6.5 by 8.5. I think that's the only one we don't have. I think we have the other 5.
We're getting close at our rate.
Yeah. Well, and quite honestly, if you want a 5.5 by 8.5, you might as well get the 6.5 by 8.5 and get that extra inch.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That's my 2 cents worth.
Okay, so I find my 4 by 4 is the easiest to remove. So in each grip mat that you receive, you'll get the actual grip mat, which is made out of photopolymer, so the same type of material as your clear stamps. You also have 2 grids, and the reason for these grids is that you can use it for measuring. But before I stick it on and show you, I just recently found out, so Nina, the owner of Waffle Flower, if you own a grip mat, you will notice if you hold it that the top is smaller than the bottom. So there is like a beveled edge here, like a slant, and that the top is smaller than the bottom, and it was done purposely. The bottom is a little bit bigger, And with 2.0, all the grids were shrunk, not shrunk, but they made it smaller so that there is more photopolymer that goes around when you're sticking it down to a surface. So for example, if I stick this down, I have a lot of that stickiness around that it will still cling to my surface and not move. So that, sorry, I was just illustrating that it won't move. So having that grid a little bit smaller so I can still see my lines, but the photopolymer at the side helps it cling onto surfaces. So all the grids that come in any of the sets that you have, if you have the 2.0, you'll notice that the grids were made smaller, so you have a lot more of that sticky surrounding for you to stick it on your surface, whether it's on your glass mat or your MISTI. With the original, you have a little bit less space, but one thing that Nina suggested was that you can trim it down a little bit so you have more of that space, but it's not ideal. I don't use the grid as much because if I'm using it in my MISTI, it already has the grid underneath. This grid does show you where the center point is as well and the cross sections. So that comes with it, and they give you 2 of them. One thing you want to keep in mind that when you're sticking this on, you want to make sure that whatever you read is going to go underneath this. So the way she said, so you don't forget, is turn your grip mat. Make sure that when you look at your Waffle Flower Grip Mat, when you turn upside down, you can no longer read it. That's what you want to stick behind. You don't want to stick the opposite side because that will transfer onto your photopolymer. Just like if you stuck this onto something inky, like if you printed something from a computer, it will take that ink off. So you want to make sure that you can't read it anymore. And then flip it. Oops. And then you're safe to go. So that is one tip. Or what I would do is probably put a little marker. So if I up and down or just an up, so you know which side to put it on. So I'm going to put that back here. So those are some of the tips that I learned from her. Another thing is that when you're working or not working with the grip mat anymore, is that you want to keep the plastic sheets that it comes with. So in a new package, if you're opening up for the first time, you will have 1 acetate on the top and 1 acetate at the bottom. It's to protect it, so that way nothing digs through it, or, just in case it touches a newspaper or paper, you don't get those numbers or letters transferred on it. So it just keeps it safe because you don't want it ruined. So even if it's on my glass mat and I know I use it often, I keep all the plastic on top. Sherry does the same thing. It's just to protect it, to make sure that you don't damage it. Next thing is that each one has multiple uses for it. Depends on what you are doing. The one I have on the bottom here is the biggest size, which is a 7.5 by 11. I like it on my big glass mat because I can put 2 A2 size cards and just mass produce, and I will show you what I mean after that. A nice thing about the 4x4 one is that you can travel with this. So if I, let's say, die cut my little pieces, I can stick them on here. I can color and bring it out because it's nice and sticky. I don't have to worry about holding it down while I'm coloring it, or washi tape it down because I'm coloring it. Another nice thing about having the 4x4 on your glass mat is that it acts as an ink pad holder. See, my ink, I'm shaking the table, but I just want to show you that it is not moving. Like, I'm pushing and it's not moving. So it's a great place to put your ink pads because, when we're ink blending and we're trying to ink and this whole, your ink pad's moving, at least it's stationed there. So if you're inking, let me just take a piece. And my hand is holding down. I don't have to worry about this ink pad, on the other side of the room. So it's not moving. So the 4x4 fits a really nice one. If you have Tim Holtz's Oxide, the full size, it fits really nicely. Mini ink cubes, depending on how crowded you like your house space, that I like to put 4. So that way at least I have wiggle room to do it. Or if you're scared that your covers are going to get lost, or let's say you're using 2 different purples, you can also put this beside. And it also helps if you videotape yourself, you know, for your channels and stuff like that. Having the lid there is also helpful. So you know what colors and your viewers know what colors. So it's a great aspect for the 4x4. Not to say you can't use any of the sizes, but the 4x4 is great. And it doesn't take up much space at all. So, any questions so far?
No, you're doing good there. I think the 4x4 is also really good if you happen to have the lawn fawn and you've already stamped and die cut, but you want to use the coloring stencils. That little 4x4 is a great little travel mat, or good for use for little things where you maybe don't want to uncover your great big mat.
Yeah. So let me just show you. So I do have the cover. It is very sticky, but you want it sticky because that's what's going to hold your paper down. So I am just using the grip mat as is. These are not garbage. You want to keep that to protect it. And you know how I said I like mass producing? So I am putting 2 papers side by side. And where's my snowflake stencil? And I can, because the grip mat is larger than my stencil, I am not using washi tape to hold my stencil down. My stencil is now stuck to that grip mat. You can see that it's sealed and it won't move. So there's no washi tape, there's no magnet. Everything is stuck to that grip mat. And I can just take, oops, I'm inking and you can hold it. I think for me, it's a security thing. I always have to hold it, but you don't need to because everything is stuck down. Like I'm just holding my glass mat because it's on top of the desk pad. It's quite slippery, but you can just ink up. Oops. Do I have an orange brush? Sorry for my hand reaching. And you can ink it all up. Okay, I know we don't see orange snowflakes, but it's what I grabbed. And you can go back. So washi tape is not there. I can do the whole panel. I don't have to worry about the washi tape in the way. And everything is stuck on. So one done. I am going to lightly pick it up so it's sticky. See how sticky that is, like peeling tape? That's one background. I can stick it onto my other and want to make sure it's sealed, and I can repeat the same thing. So this is what I like. It's really sticky, mass producing to the finest.
One thing people might want to do with their stencils, much like you did with the magnet, is create a little tab for yourself with washi tape.
Yeah.
Because I know I find once it's stuck down, getting the stencil up off the grip mat can sometimes be a challenge.
Yes.
Especially if you don't have long fingernails, or I know I've also stuck myself under the fingernail with the corner of the stencil. So if you just make yourself a little tab with the washi tape, that'll help you lift as well.
Yeah. So just to put a piece of washi tape on both sides, so almost like a hinge type, sticky on one side and then sticky on the bottom. See how sticky it is? It won't even come up. One thing that they do suggest from Waffle Flower is try not to put a pokey tool in there because you're going to damage, especially if you're not going underneath the stencil, you're poking through the grip mat, you will damage your grip mat. But see, mass producing really, really quickly. And then lifting it up too. And nothing peels off. And I have 2 card fronts finish. So that is one way I like to use it. So it eliminates the washi tape, it eliminates the magnets. There's no awkward hand placement. So you'll never get smudges unless you're putting your hands in your ink pad, or there's uneven applications. Because as you saw, I just held onto the glass mat and I did my thing and I was able to make 2 nice card fronts ready to go. One thing you want to make sure it cleans really easily, but you want to make sure that you don't have embossing powder or glitter close by. Just like your stamp sets, once it goes on, it's really hard to take off. There's no way it's going to get stuck in there and your grip mat is pretty much done because there's no way it will come off because of the stickiness. So you don't want this close to powder or glitter. So if you're doing heat embossing, it's okay to use Versamark ink or WOW ink. But when you're doing the embossing powder, when you're pouring it, you want to make sure you move it to the side and then do your powder. And make sure if you're heat setting it that this is covered. So this is where this comes in handy. You just want to cover it. So that way, even if you're heat setting it, the powder's not blowing onto it and ruining it. One thing that I haven't tried, but Nina from Waffle Flower had a great video, is that if you put paste on here, let's say if you're doing stenciling and you put paste and let's say paste got stuck on here, leave it overnight, she said. And the next day you come and you peel off the paste. It comes off nicely. That's one thing I haven't tried on to because, kind of scared to dry paste. But she said it comes off nicely, but you just have to make sure it dries. Just I guess like glue, when it dries, you can pick it off anything. So that's one more thing that you can use with stencil through paste. Avoid contact with sharp, so like scissors, X-Acto knives, pokey tools, or any abrasive materials because it will ruin the grip mat. And of course, if you're using ink colors, we all know red is very, very, very strong color. We already know that it doesn't come off our stamps. It will do the same thing with the grip mat, that it will stain if you're using red, but it won't change the stickiness to it. It will still work the same. So let's say this is no longer sticky. Just like our stamp sets, you can spray it with water. If you're just cleaning ink, let's say you ink bled, you clean it with water, use a nice microfiber cloth and wipe it like our stamp set. If you have some stubborn ink, you want to just lightly wash it with dish soap. She suggested Dawn dish soap. You don't want to soak it in water for a long period of time. So it's really fast cleaning to do. So you don't want to put this and submerge it in water for like 5-10 minutes. You could just lightly wash it with Dawn soap and then wipe it clean and it's ready to go. So there it is. Mine is really, really sticky again. Another thing is water, Dawn dish soap. Don't use rubbing alcohol or any chemical-based cleaners because it will distort your grip mat and ruin it. So those are the, housekeeping rules for grip mat. But let me show you some other things that you can do with this. So one of my favorite things to do, I've already done one layer of my postage collage, is that because of the stickiness and you don't have to worry about the washi tape, lining things up go really quickly. So I already did the first layer just so you could see the elements a little bit faster. Whoops, where's my number 2? So here I am just matching it up. Oops. Oh, maybe that will help me because my image is upside. So don't do what I did. Put your project upside down. I'm like, where's my cardinals? So I've done this a couple times where I did all my stencil number 1s. I did at least 5 of them using the grip mat, and then I came back, put them one by one, and then I stuck stencil number 2 and then kept adding more and more. So my colors might not match here, but I just took whatever ink colors I had in my bag. So, oops, make sure it's stuck down. So, and then I'm just gonna do the mountain. So once again, there's no washi tape, there's no magnet holding this down. So this is me using the big one. So in a second, I will show you. trying to figure out which ones are the mountains. But so here, making sure. My mountains, because I don't want my cardinals. And then I need green for the trees. So I won't complete, I'll just do the trees and then show you, because I have a lot more to show. So here is the tree. So this is just the grip mat alone. So if you already have a platform, you're happy with it, but the grip mat is useful on its own too. So having something like a slick surface, like a glass mat, that's all the grip mat needs. And then you could do it. So this is stenciling, but now you're saying, what about stamping? So, sorry, got lots of paper everywhere. I'm just going to move it aside. So here is the stamping. Right, make sure. And you have an acrylic block. That's what it is, right? So having your acrylic block, this is stuck down nice and even. I won't be able to repeat it if I do something wonky, but I don't have to tape my paper down. I know it's going to stick. Okay, I'm on camera. Watch this be wonky. And lift. I love that cushion too. It gives really nice impressions. And I can just make a card with this. So let me do a reindeer. Oops. And you can just stamp on top of that grip mat. There's no magnet in the way. My paper is not shifting. So if you're just doing it on the tabletop, it is holding everything down. So I'm just letting the paper absorb the ink on top. Oops, don't want to drop. And let's just add one more thing to this card. Just so something. I am going to do a green tree. Maybe here. There. So stamping is also pretty cool on it. You didn't see me have to hold and try to position it. I didn't have to stick it down. So another nice thing about the grip mat. Any questions about the grip mat? Is there something you want to see? Because I am going to show you the grip mat inside of MISTI and why it's my go-to.
So far, no questions. Carol has said, don't scrape your die cuts over the grip mat either. Little tiny pieces will stick all over. Ask me how I know.
That's true.
And Jennifer is saying that she's really enjoying the explanations that you're giving and giving lots of great tips on the grip mat. So thank you for your comment, Jennifer.
Thank you. So that's it. Covered because I don't want anything to happen to it. Different sizes do different things. It's what you like to use. My grip mat at the moment is in my small mini MISTI. And once again, it is covered so nothing goes on top. And it's sticky. And even though you use it a lot of times, I'm telling you, that grip mat is so strong that you're always going to fight with it like as if it's brand new. And that's what you want. You want that sticky because then you know your paper is going to be well taken care of. The nice thing about the grip mat too is if you have a paper, and so I'm just going to use this for demo purposes, is that the magnet's still strong enough that grip mat there, even though it's so thick, that magnet is very strong. That's how strong it is. Like I am trying to toss it and that magnet is stuck. And that is on top of the grip mat. So just to show you how strong this little bugger is, it's strong. So inside this is the mini, so it's the smallest one. I have the 4 3/4 by 6 grip mat. It is stuck down to the plastic part, so I removed my mouse pad and it is stuck right on this glass in that small one. I lined it up to the edge, so that way if I'm putting my paper to the edge, it's also lined up to the edge. If you wanted to, you could add that grid underneath, but the nice thing about this stamping platform is that it already has some of the grids. So either or, if you want to add it, it is smaller than the grip mat, so you'll have it still clinged to the MISTI. So let's add a piece of paper. And what I liked is when earlier, if you were tuning in earlier, you saw me use the magnet to hold my paper down as we're stamping sentiments or stamping icons. Because now, whoops, one second, it looks like I didn't, there. So now I don't need it because my paper is stuck onto my grip mat. So similar to how we use the grip mat on the glass mat, it's the same thing over here. It's just with the MISTI, with the MISTI, I can double stamp. So let's say if I don't have a clear color, so I'm not going to use my pigment ink. I'm just going to use a distress, just so I can show you that if it's not a solid color. So see how light that is? I don't have to worry about the paper moving because it's stuck down. I can go back and I can stamp my sentiment. So if you're happy with that, you could leave it, but it doesn't matter how many times you go on. Sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes you don't need to go over depending on how juicy your ink pad is. But that's the nice thing about the stamping tool is that you can go on top, and it doesn't shift, so you don't have that shadow mark. So that is one way that you could do it. It goes for stamp sets as well. You can stamp, and very similar to how we did on the grip mat, but having it in the MISTI and having that repetitive. But one thing I really like about this, so anything that we did with the MISTI at the beginning, anything we did with the grip mat, you can do it all the same way here. But one thing I really liked about this is that, you know, sometimes when you're stamping and you can't get the die nicely, you know how when you cut it out, it's supposed to have that nice white shadow around the icon. Well, and there's 2 things that you can do. You can use this. If I place my negative there, I've already pre-cut this, but I want to make sure the icons are correct. I can puzzle piece, and I can drop my die, my image onto it. So the only thing is you have to make sure that it is centered on it. So you want to make sure that I just want to make sure that there is a white border all the way around. And you can see if you tilt your head, I do one at a time. I close the lid so I know that it is stuck on, and then you can do the other ones. So this one goes here. So I'm going to just do the 2 because I want to show you something else you can do with that. Because you could also eyeball it without the negative. But I prefer this method because it tends to be a little bit easier. And now I'll close it. So now I know those 2 are in its spot correctly. Okay, and now you can ink it up. Well, I know my pigment ink is very strong in color. Well, let's see. So I'm gonna do, where's my, I don't think. I'm trying to see if I have a black for the penguin, but I don't. So here, I'm just doing 2 different colors. Just making sure those are stuck in. Stamp up and stamp again. Oops, that was the wrong color. Oopsies. My reindeer. And here. So that one shifted. It's all about the eyeballing, but this is another way that if you don't like matching the dies up, you can stamp it this way by using the negatives. And then you have your nice little critters. Let's say you threw out your negative. You can also place this because it's sticky. I can stamp it without using a magnet. I need to find the right one. I know this is some people's preferred way of stamping. I like it the other where I just die cut because it's quite tricky. So I need to make sure that T is on here. Watch it be off. Stamp. That's stuck. And oh, that one's even better. That one turned out better than the one with the negative. This one was easier to eyeball without the negative in its room, but look at that, me stamping on top of a die cut. So that is one way. Another favorite part for me, is, let's see where I put it. So we all have probably a bin or more of scraps. So sometimes you just need a sentiment and you don't want to waste a full size of paper. So this is where this grip mat comes in handy. So you can see me that I like to use a vertical, but you can turn it around. There's no right or wrong. And because it is a sentiment, I know this is sticky. I can put it anywhere on my grip mat. I'm not lying at the bottom. I put it right in the center. I know that is stuck on. It's not coming off. And I can find a sentiment, place it in the middle, get the lid to pick it up. So that grip mat has the same, what's it called, thickness as the mouse pad or the foam that comes with it. Oops. So I didn't have to add something because it already has that nice height to it. I can stamp that one more time. Not as much. That penguin wants to come for a ride. Keeps clinging to the top. And I didn't have to use the magnet. But there. So all those strips of paper, I didn't have to fiddle with a magnet here trying to say, oh, let's put it here, and try to get a sentiment in. That grip mat comes in handy and you can use up all your scraps. So let me see if there,
if I can interject,
yeah.
The point you were just making about not needing tape or a magnet, the same would apply if you were using one of those big red rubber stamps. When you were doing it originally, you were having trouble figuring out where to put the magnet and how to hold the paper in place.
Yeah.
With the grip mat, you can cover the entire surface and not worry about where you're going to put the magnet because everything is going to get stamped.
Yes. And that's the nice thing about the both of them together is that they work really well together and they work really well apart. So it really depends on what you want to use it for. But this has been my go-to, having the grip mat inside my MISTI. in both my Misties, this one and the original size one. The nice thing about if you look at the mouse pad, is that sometimes if you're stamping stuff, this mouse pad was made a little bit smaller. So it does move inside. It goes up and down. So the one thing you always have to remember is that, let's say if you're restamping, you want to make sure everything is pushed to a corner, because let's say you stamp the first one and this moves up and you restamp again, it's going to do a shadow, create a shadow. So you always need to make sure that it's always lined up in one corner that you're used to. Mine is always the right hand, the bottom right hand. But with a grip mat, you don't have to worry about that, because the grip mat is stuck to the base and your paper is stuck to it. So even if you turned it upside down and had to restamp it, it will turn out to be in the same area. It won't shift for you. So the really good benefits of it. And that is pretty much it. My two favorite tools in one.
Well, thank you, Darlene, for all of those great tips and tricks. How many of you are going to be putting a grip mat or a MISTI or both on your wish list? Hopefully many of you, if you don't already have them, are raising your hand. But if you're still not 100% sold, trying is believing. I mean, Darlene has done an excellent job explaining all the ins and outs tonight. But if you are local to us and you want to come and try it yourself, we do have a MISTI and we do have a grip mat available in the store for you to try out. So don't hesitate to come in and see us and take it for a little test drive. We'd be happy to let you try it out and see for yourself. So I think with that, we will sign off for the evening. Again, thank you, Darlene, for a very informative Learning Live tonight. And we wish everyone a wonderful evening. Good night, everyone.
Good night.